Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Limitless Mindset Part 2. The what? Mindset. Ideation, inspiration, motivation, purpose, implementation, methods, process, ideation, implementation. With these three combined, you become limitless. Mindset. The deeply held beliefs, attitudes, and assumptions we create about who we are, how the world works, what we are capable of and deserve, and what is possible. That is mindset. The first element of the three-part limitless model is mindset, which is the mental attitude or disposition that predetermines a person's response to and interpretations of situations. Mindset is made up of beliefs, assumptions, and attitudes we hold about ourselves and the world around us. All behavior is driven by belief, so before we address how to learn, we must first address the underlying beliefs we hold about what is possible. We're not born with pre-installed mindsets about what we're capable of achieving. We learn these fixed and limited ways of thinking from the people in our lives and the culture we experience growing up. Think of a young elephant tied to a stake in the ground. When it's a baby, the elephant isn't strong enough to pull the stake up. So it eventually stops trying because it learns the effort is futile. As the elephant grows, it gains more than enough power and strength to pull out the stake, but it remains tied up by something as inconsequential as a rope and a flimsy piece of metal because of what is learned as a baby. In psychology, it's called learned helplessness. Most of us behave like the elephant. At some point, we had an experience that gave us an impression of what we're capable of, and our belief about our potential has been set ever since. But just as helplessness is learned, it's just as possible to learn to be limitless. In this section, you're gonna learn about the 7 lies we've been taught about our potential and how to replace them with new beliefs. I use the term lie intentionally. In this case, lie is an acronym for limited idea entertained. Limited idea entertained. If you are like the vast majority of people out there, you are entertaining ideas about yourself that define you as something less than what you truly have the potential to achieve. You're giving these ideas energy and allowing them to take residence in your mind, but they're really nothing but bullshit. In this case, an abbreviation for belief system. Over the coming chapters, you'll discover where these lies come from, how they imprison you, and what you can do about it. And keep asking yourself this question: how many of my perceived constraints are nothing more than lies and bullshit? I think you're gonna be stunned with the answers, and that the answers are gonna be liberating. A quick story before we get going. One of the most cherished friendships of my life was the one I shared with Stanley. As you know, Stan's Marvel creation helped me through some of the biggest challenges of my life when I was younger, and they continue to be a non-stop source of inspiration to this day. My conversations with Stan were always engaging and very often illuminating. I remember one such conversation when we were in a car together on our way to a dinner. Stan looked resplendent in his suit with a bold Spider-Man tie, and I was inspired to ask him something I always wanted to ask. Stan, you've created so many great characters over the years, like the Avengers and X-Men. I said, who's your favorite character? He didn't even hesitate a second. Iron Man, he said. And who's yours? I pointed to his tie. That would be Spider-Man. Stan nodded and said, with great power comes great responsibility. That's so true, Stan. And the opposite is also true. With great responsibility comes great power. He seemed to like that, which tickled me to no end. But while I'd never phrased it that way before, I realized that I was voicing one of the key tenets of the limitless mindset. When we take responsibility for something, we are imbued with great power to make things better. That's what a limitless mindset is all about. Our background and circumstances may have influenced who we are, but we must be accountable for who we become. It's about understanding that we are responsible for our assumptions and attitudes, and when you accept that all of your potential is entirely within your control, then the power of the potential grows dramatically. So superhero, let's get it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble, it's what you know for sure that just ends so. Mark Twain. 5. The spell of belief systems. Why do your beliefs have such an effect on your life? Why do limiting beliefs keep you from your goals? How do you reject limiting beliefs? Grab some imaginary popcorn because we're gonna take a quick side trip to the movies. The scene goes like this. A bridge is about to collapse because a supervillain has weakened the supports to the point where the entire thing is gonna go crumbling into the river. As the bridge creaks and teeters, a superhero learns about the crisis and races to the scene. She's the only person with the strength to avert catastrophe and save hundreds of lives. Our superhero is less than 10 seconds from the bridge now, but as she gets closer, a voice in her head reminds her of the time she face planted while doing a somersault in an elementary school. A couple of seconds later, she recalls her father telling her that it would be best if she set her sights low for her future. With the bridge in sight, another vision emerges in front of her, her former best friend ridiculing her for her delusions of grandeur. Rubble from the bridge topples into the water, the creaking gets louder, the screams of dozens and dozens fill the air, and our superhero, overwhelmed with doubt, sits down by the side of the road, covers her face with her hands, and drowns in self-pity. Wait, what? You've never seen that scene in a superhero movie, right? There are some reasons for that. One is that it would be a terrible story, another is that, regardless of the darkness in their past or the moral conflicts they might be facing, superheroes don't become true superheroes by giving in to limiting beliefs. Superman doesn't think that maybe on a good day he might be able to leave a tall building, or maybe a couple of stories at least. Tony Stark doesn't think this Iron Man suit is probably gonna fail me at the worst possible time because I'm inherently a screw up. Captain Marvel doesn't break through our atmosphere and suddenly start thinking, I'm not sure I have the emotional capacity to fly solo through space. They have superpowers, and any sense of restriction be damned. And you know what? You have superpowers too. How do you realize them? You begin with your mindset. Finding Maharaja Bannister. When I was a kid, maybe 9 or 10 years old, we had a big family reunion. There were a couple dozen of us around a huge table in a big busy restaurant. It was a Saturday night, so the place was packed with the weird stuff, ping-ponging from table to table as quickly as they could. A few minutes after we all gathered, our waitresses came over to take our order. As you can imagine, this was a lengthy process. About halfway through, the waitress came around to ask me what I wanted to eat and drink. It was then that I realized that she hadn't been writing down anything my relatives had ordered. I found this extremely curious. There was something like 25 hours, and I'd seen her serving other customers, so I knew we weren't her only table. How was she possibly going to remember everything we ordered? I told her what I wanted and then watched her carefully as she made her way around the rest of the table. I did not have a high level of confidence that my meal was going to remotely resemble what I had requested. Even at that age, I had a healthy amount of skepticism. Not because I was a negative person or because I didn't have faith in people, but rather that I needed to see anything out of the ordinary before I believed it was possible. In this case, I figured that at best the waitresses would get most of our orders correct, but she'd wind up putting them down in the wrong places, and we'd find ourselves trading plates all across the table. Well, first our drinks came and everyone got excited what they wanted. Even the cousin who wanted no ice in her Coke, and another who requested that drink came with a twist of lemon, a twist of lime, and 2 cherries. Okay, I thought that was pretty good, but there's a lot more to come. A few minutes later, the salads come out, and again everything was perfect. The people who wanted their dressings on the side got it that way. The people who wanted their dressings tossed with their salads got that, and everyone got the dressing they asked to get. My skepticism was being tested, and then the main courses were delivered. Not one mistake, and there were some crazy special requests. Everything was cooked the way we wanted, and all of the side dishes were the right ones. I dove into my meal at that point, but I couldn't stop thinking about what the waitress had accomplished at that. At this age, I'd only just begun to read competently, and my brain injury had caused me all kinds of learning challenges, and yet there was someone who had shown me that our brains are capable of far more than I would have imagined. That waitress was Roger Bannister. Bannister was a track star in the 1950s. In the early years of Bannister's career, it was widely assumed that it was physically impossible for an athlete to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. The feeling was that our bodies would break down from the effort before the time could be achieved. Then on May 6, 1954, Bannister ran a mile in 3 minutes and 59.4 seconds, proving that the 4-minute barrier was indeed breakable. What is most interesting to me is that less than 2 months later, someone broke Bannister's record, and then that record was broken, and then that one. The times have been dropping ever since. What Bannister did was so that this barrier wasn't in fact a barrier at all. That was what this waitress showed me. Through her, I saw that what I perceived my brain's capacity to be was so much less than what it really was. As you know, I continued to struggle with learning for many years, but from the moment of that dinner, I had a model for what was possible. The waitress in this way was limitless. She demonstrated something in front of me that I would never that I would never in a million years have thought was possible. I never got to know her, but I'm forever grateful because what she did for me personally was to permanently change my perception of my own restrictions. She altered my mindset. It was impossible for me to buy into the notion that I could expect to accomplish only a modest amount with my brain when I knew that others could achieve so much more. I just needed to find a method. I'm going to share much of that method with you in this book. At its core, it's one fundamental concept, unlimiting. The key to making yourself limitless is unlearning false assumptions. So often we don't accomplish something because we convinced ourselves that we can do it. Let's go back to Roger Bannister for a moment. Every day before May 6, 1954, people were absolutely certain that a sub 4-minute mile was beyond the range of human capabilities. 46 days after Bannister did it, someone else beat his time and more than 400 racers have followed them. Running a mile in less than 4 minutes is still an extraordinary feat, but it is not an impossible feat. Once that barrier was broken, many achieved it. So how do you face down limiting beliefs? Tomorrow, what limiting beliefs do to us? So, this is guys, bye bye.